I crunched the numbers on Clemson's running backs for 2025, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I think they'll finish the season. Coming up right now on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, always make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, but only if you like the episode. And I want you to be a part of it. I know you will. I guarantee it. So you know how we do it here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content, Monday through Friday, every single week. And in between episodes, if you want to stay in touch, you can follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show. And we got another good one here. You know, I look back at one of the first videos that I ever did here for Locked On. Now we're halfway through May, and that's like 3 months into it. So pretty exciting here, but looked at the very first video I did, or one of the first videos I did, and it was about the running back group and what I thought would happen for 2024 under the tutelage of CJ Spiller. And now that he's got a group of guys that seems to be very dynamic, how would they really work out, and what would the results be? You know, a lot of people are looking forward to seeing Gideon Davidson, but there's still a lot of question marks at the running back room, and it is going to be a new look running back room, because you're not going to have Phil Mafah anymore leading the way. He was the leading rusher last season for Clemson. And, you know, it was by far, there was nobody else really behind him at all. And so outside of Phil Mafah and Cade Klubnik, you really didn't have anybody else running the ball like Phil Mafah did. So what will Clemson do in 2025? That's kind of the big question, and who will be the leader for them. When you look at the stat sheet, Phil Mafah had 216 carries, 1,115 yards at 8 touchdowns. Cade Klubnik had 7 touchdowns of 463 yards. Jay Haynes behind that, 295. And then after that, just a little bit over 100 for Antonio Williams and Keith Adams Jr. So the running back room, a true running back, you're looking at Jay Haynes and Keith Adams, you know, both combined getting about 400 yards, where Phil Mafah, you know, had more than double that, more than triple that, really, or right at about triple that. So what is going to happen in 2025? And I think that Adam Randall leads the way for this new look running back room. I think even if you crunch all the numbers and you say this player is going to do this and this player is going to do that, I went through on a spreadsheet and then I threw it into AI and I said, okay, what do you really think based on what last year did, what the possibility is for next year, what do average teams do that have this type of lineup? And I looked at specifically the running back position to see who's going to play what roles and who comes out on the top this year, you know, versus last year. And I think Adam Randall still is going to take the lead for Clemson in carries to start the season. Don't get angry at me yet. I didn't say for the entire season, but I said for the start of the season, I do believe that Adam Randall is going to kind of carry the team, and fans need to get ready for that. They need to get used to it. He is a converted wide receiver to running back. I get that. That's not super exciting to say out loud that you don't have a true running back as your running back number one. But what we've seen is he has the size, he has the toughness, he has the leadership, and he has the versatility to be able to be a good weapon behind what Cade Klubnik has in that offensive line. Now, this is a guy who, to me, he's not going to just come out and be a rotational guy. I do think he's going to lead the way for the team for the first couple of games of the season, maybe even for halfway through the season. I think he gives you a good boost at the red zone, you know, being able to power through the tackles if he needs to. He has pretty good straight line speed. Can he get out in space? I think so, because he's a wide receiver. He has that opportunity as well. So I really do like what I see from Adam Randall being running back one, week one, no matter what. I do think that he's going to be able to contribute to the team. And when you look at it, the best case scenario for Adam Randall is that he handles the running back one reps really well, and he's very physical. And the worst case scenario is that, to me, it doesn't work out from the very beginning, from the get-go, as my dad would like to say. And so that would kind of worry me there if it already didn't work, starting out the gate. But I do think that what we've already seen is that Clemson and Adam Randall does work so far from 2024. Now, we haven't seen it. We don't have a ton of, examples out there or a big sample size. But when you look at statistically what he can do, he really has, 44 yards last season as a running back. And he is still learning at the running back position. But I think what we really will see from him is if he stays healthy, he's going to be a guy that can kind of start you off strong. And he wants desperately to be successful at Clemson. He could have gone anywhere else and said, hey, you know what? I'm not a wide receiver. I'm not a running back. I'm not a wide receiver here. I want to be a wide receiver. And his outside, what he didn't do well as a wide receiver is not going to have the same problems as a running back. And so the fact that he's willing to retool himself for the team and for the betterment of himself too, and stick it out through Clemson, shows a guy who's a leader and really made key plays at the end of the season to keep Clemson's season going. I don't think that you'll see Adam Randall as a 1,000-yard rusher. I think that would be a little bit crazy of me to say, right? I don't think that would be fair for me to come out here on YouTube, on podcasts, and say, Adam Randall's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. You probably would call me crazy and never listen to me again. But could he be a 500-yard rusher? Could he have 5, 6 touchdowns? How many carries do you think he's going to get in 2025? If he's starting out strong at the beginning of the season, I could easily see him getting 20 more carries a game at the very beginning, at least. Now, maybe towards the end of the season, it kind of tapers off. But how many carries is he going to get for Clemson, and how many yards is he going to get? For me, when I crunch the numbers, when I put it through AI, it's saying that on average, he probably could make plus or minus, for better or worse, 650 yards rushing, which kind of sounds crazy to think. But, if he's leading the way, he could kind of split what Phil Maffa had. Now, he's not going to take all of what Phil Maffa had, but can't you realistically see that Phil Maffa would split, let's say 1,200 yards is split? Who would you split them between? I think you would split them between, number one, Adam Randall for sure to begin the season. Now, later on in the season, that's where my next segment is going to go into, where we'll talk about what's going to be the storm that's coming through. We know we have the running back leader to start the season. To me, is Adam Randall. You're not changing my mind on that. Is he an experiment? I think in a lot of ways, yeah, he's an experiment, but the experiment is now, right? They're trying him out now. They're seeing what he can do now. Fall, he should be schemed and ready to go to touch the ball early and often, and also hold up in pass protection by the fall. This is still football. He's been playing it for almost his whole lifetime. He should be able to know how to pick up a certain position, and he's talented enough to do it at a serviceable level, right? So he should be fully acclimated by this point. Now we're in May, and he's going to get a crash course in fall camp as well to solidify those things that he learned in the spring at the running back position. So for me, I'm starting out with Adam Randall, and I might be crazy, but I'm saying 600 yards. I think he's going to split some of what Phil Maffa used to have. So give me 600 yards and maybe 5 touchdowns. Tell me I'm crazy. All right, we're going to talk about the guy I know you're ready for me to talk about, that freshman storm that's coming. You want me to just skip over everyone and just do a whole show about him, and maybe I will. But the freshman storm is definitely coming, and that is Gideon Davidson, and we'll talk about him right next. The days are getting longer and the weather is warming up and people are spending more time outside, which means it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, WayFair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. WayFair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and all at prices that fit your budget. You know, Tiger fans, one of the things that I love about WayFair, after a long day of recording podcasts, studying all my flight plans and coaching a little bit of softball, I walk home, I get into my house and I feel like I'm at home. And that's because, you know, I've used a lot of the stuff you see back here is from WayFair. They got everything that you want, from modern furniture, things for your podcast, things for your Clemson themed man cave. And the best part is the shipping is super fast. And you can put it all together and it doesn't take a 35-page book to figure it out. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just do one step at a time and you can get anything you want. Kitchen tables, chairs, coffee tables. I mean, and they even have Clemson themed stuff for your man cave. It is really awesome. So you got to go check it out. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture as well for this summer. Get outside with WayFair. Head over to wayfair.com right now. That is WayFair.com. WayFair. Every style, every home. Now, again, I know what you're thinking. You want me to just go ahead and just do a whole show, do maybe 5 shows about the new Travis Etienne. And that is Gideon Davidson, the most explosive freshman since, well, Travis Etienne. Fans know it. Analysts know it. I know it. I'm not going to hide it from you. That's where the fun gets into the speculation of what Gideon Davidson can do. If you've seen any pictures of the man, well, if you haven't seen a picture of him, where have you been? Why are you listening to this podcast, watching this show on YouTube? Why are you doing that if you haven't seen a picture of Gideon Davidson? He is a grown man already. He's not even 21 years old yet, and he has biceps bigger than, you know, some of the WWE wrestlers that we love. The hype is real. It's not just coach speak. It's not just noise or analyst overstating potential of players. The buzz is real, and you can feel it. The spring and the energy from the spring game is real. The insider reports that we're getting are real. And the film that we've seen from him in high school and the results that he had in high school are big time. Gideon Davidson, I think, could finish his career at Clemson as being one of the more dangerous weapons on the ground at running back that Clemson has ever had. I mean, if you really think about it, what he has been able to do at the high school level, what he's been able to do, you know, with the amount of experience or the limited amount of experience he's had has been great. Now, the thing is, how is he going to enter into his role at Clemson? You know, he could be a guy who could get to the outside really quick. He could be a swing pass guy. He's very versatile because he has getaway speed that not a lot of people have. He's a big-time recruit from Virginia, has really good burst, really good agility. And one thing that Clemson hasn't had since Travis Etienne is that sustainable top-end speed. You know, Phil Maffa would take a while to get to his top-end speed, but it was actually pretty nice, to be honest with you. Will Shipley, on the other hand, would get to his top-end speed very fast, very quickly, but he couldn't hold it for more than 1 second, right? It was like he reached it and then it dwindled. So the arc was dropped. You know, it hit the peak and then it dropped really quick. Phil Maffa was slower on his trend, but once he hit it, he could sustain it a little bit more, but it took him a while to get there. I think this is where you're going to go more to that Travis Etienne of the guy that can do both. One that can burst out with the agility to the outside, up the middle. He's got the muscles to force through between the tackles, but he also has the top end speed and to get there. And that's what we've seen has been missing from Clemson's running back room for the past couple of years. Sometimes the gaps are there, but by the time the running back actually gets there or the play actually develops, the gap that you saw after the snap was gone. And so how does Clemson get back to that? Well, I think that Matt Luke has done a great job of getting his offensive linemen ready to run the program and run the schemes and the calls and the plays that Garrett Riley wants him to run. But I also think that just recruiting is a huge deal. CJ Spiller has been able to go out and get Gideon Davidson. And, I do feel like there's one person in the way of Gideon Davidson, and it's not Gideon Davidson. And I think you know who I'm going to say. I think the one person in the way of Gideon Davidson is probably Dabo Swinney. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that Dabo has already shown us how he handles freshmen. You have really got to prove yourself to get early opportunities as a true freshman. And while we have a lot of hype and, we want to see it and excitement around Gideon Davidson, will we actually see it early enough as we would want? We would want maybe snap one of the LSU game. I don't know. And Dabo is rightfully kind of jaded about that. He gave Jamie Harper the very first snap many years ago. And it was highly written about. It was said that that was one of the promises for him in his recruiting trail. Hey, we'll get you that very first snap of the season. And unfortunately, the very first snap of the season was fumbled away. So I can understand why Dabo is a little bit jaded about and a little bit cautious about giving a true freshman the very first snap of the season. So let's not give him the very first snap of the season. Let's give him the second snap. No, I'm just kidding. I could see what we saw with Sammy Brown and with Moore and Wesco. It was apparent that those guys were talented and deserved and had earned, well, I'll say they were talented enough to earn their playing time. But Dabo, he's going to really make you show and prove it over time. He's not just going to throw you into the fire at the very first game. I don't know if he really wants to lose a game doing that. And I don't know if that's going to be the concern either, because Clemson has other guys that can hold their own against a team like LSU. But fans are going to want to see Gideon Davidson quick, fast, and in a hurry. My prediction is that you're not going to see him much at the very beginning of the season. Now, if this changes, maybe I'll be shocked about it. But I can see him slowly getting involved more and more. And I don't mean, that he's not involved at all, but I feel like, look at his snap count from November versus September, October. You're going to see a lot more snaps in November than you are in September. That is my prediction for Gideon Davidson, even with the potentially easier schedule, because it gets more difficult as the season goes on. In November, we've already talked about is extremely difficult. But my opinion is that Davidson will be, while Randall his curve will spike at the beginning and then taper off, Davidson's will slowly, gradually peak to the very top, and he will eventually take over that running back one slot from Adam Randall. That's how I feel. So if you look back at the prediction, I think he has more touchdowns than Adam Randall. So we'll say Adam Randall has 5. I'll give you Gideon Davidson. I'll give you 8 or 9. How about that? I'm going to say 650 yards, maybe 600 plus yards for him. I truly think the split will be Phil Maffa's 1,200 yards will be split between Randall and Gideon Davidson. And it's all because of who starts out with more carries first. So both of them will be 600 or more yards by the end of the season. Davidson will have more touchdowns because I do think he has more of that elite burst and that top end speed, and he's that true running back. He'll start as a rotational weapon. By game 6, he's going to be the guy. Maybe game 7, he'll be the guy to me. That's what I'm really predicting right now as far as Gideon Davidson. And then we'll have to move into the wild cards. And there's one guy who had a great spring that I don't want to forget about, and you can't forget about either. And some other guys that want and are going to be pushing for for some looks as well, and going to be pushing for us to talk about them here on the podcast as well. All right, so segment 3, we're going to get into the wild cards for Clemson. And I don't necessarily want to put Eziomume in as a wild card. Is that weird for me to say that I don't think Eziomume is really a wild card? He's had the best spring of any running back. The coaches I know love his work ethic. He doesn't seem to turn the ball over very much. He's been putting in a ton of work from what I'm hearing, being a blocker for the offense when they're in passing down situations. He, to me, could be the glue, could be the balance, could be the rotation. There has to be a rotation with this group. There's just not one guy that's sticking out outside of maybe Davidson later on in the season. But to me, David Eziomume had the spring that showed you that, hey, don't forget about me. While Randall brings you the size and the versatility to be a wide receiver and to kill you in the passing game, Davidson brings you that explosiveness to do really like seal a deal on the game and just blow a game wide open or close the deal. Eziomume is Mr. Consistency for me. That's what I think that you're going to see from him. And he may be the quietest 500, 600-yard carrier for Clemson too. You know, I could totally see all three of these guys sharing the load of about 500 to 600 yards. Now, that's not flashy or glamorous by any means, but it's balanced. It's rotational. And I think that's what we need to expect going into 2025. Will Eziomume have more than Adam Randall? I think it really is up to them and how much they can adapt to the live game. We've seen him in the spring, and I know what you're going to tell me. The spring is what the spring is, and it's not for sure what you can expect to happen. But I do feel like that Eziomume has been demanding and earning more time and more opportunity out there. Who is the real running back number one when it's all going to matter the most? I think it'll be Gideon Davidson by the end of the season, Adam Randall by the beginning of the season. And I think that you're going to have David Eziomume be that guy that rotates in, that not a lot of people are going to talk about, but is going to have a really good season. And it's unfortunate for him. Hopefully he does not get to a point where he's like, hey, I'm ready to have my name on the poster. And I could completely understand that. But he could be a part of a really special group of running backs and a team that could make it to the national championship with him as a key player in it, whether or not he's getting the love from the big networks out there. So I don't want to put him in my wild card scenario, but I can't put him in the freshman scenario because he's not really a true freshman, like Gideon Davidson. Will Clemson's running back group get 2,400 yards like they did last season? I think so. When I did some of the analytics and I ran things through the AI, there was some times that would say there would be an outlier of over 3,000 yards rushing. I don't see that. I can't personally see that happening at all. And I put the feedback to the AI and I said, if you're in the 3,000s, you're talking about one of the best running teams in the country behind Army. I just don't see that happening for Clemson ever, at least not with this team. And not without Cade Klubnik having to take, or any quarterback for that matter, because Clemson is a heavy on the quarterback running. But I think that Cade Klubnik would have to increase his rushing a ton. I don't know if he's going to really increase his rushing a ton. Jay Haynes, also another big wild card for me. I see him going, he's going to have to go down, in my opinion. So while you're going to have guys going up, you're going to have Haynes and Klubnik either staying the same or going down. If he returns early, maybe he can add another 300 yards to my expectation, but it's still hard to say. He tore his ACL late in the season, but he averaged like 6+ yards per carry. So depends on how much he has returned and how healthy he truly is, that he can come back. If he's demanding playing time beyond 300 yards total and a couple of touchdowns, that to me is almost like you've gotten to a point where you have too many players. You can't give you can't rotate that much, because you really don't want 5 running backs or 6 running backs if you add in Keith Adams Jr. You're just not going to be able to give them all the love and appreciation that you need. Now, I only have one child, but I know what you're thinking. If you're out there, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 children, it's very hard to give them all equal amount of opportunities, equal amount of attention and love. And, while you love them all probably equal, might like some a little bit more than you like the others. But when it comes to football and when it comes to a sport, you have to play the best for the different scenarios that you have. And there's only limited amounts of scenarios, because if you have a 3 and out, you've got, maybe you're going to use 1, 2 guys at the most in those rotations. If you have 2 or 3 conversions on a drive, you're not still going to probably use 6 running backs, and that's on one entire drive. So, and again, the what is the max cap for this team? I don't see 2,900. I don't see 3,000. I don't really see 10% better. 10% better would be like 2,700. And that to me is still a stretch for Clemson in 2025. So I would predict 2,400 yards again. Nobody will cover 700 yards. I will be shocked if there was more than a 700, 800 yard rusher. So that's my bold take there. I think you're going to have the same amount of rushing yards. They're just going to have to be split around more running backs. And that's going to dilute you having your breakout running back over 1,000-yard rusher. So just scratch that from your mind. If a rusher gets to 800 yards, then they've done really well, in my opinion. Or something else has happened negative, which I don't want to talk about. But for the wild cards that are out there, Adams and Green, I think I don't know how much of a role they will have, even though I think that Keith Adams should have more than he has been getting. But Jarvis Green has kind of been a little bit forgotten about. We haven't seen a ton from him, and plus he's been injured. Cade Klubnik, you expect the offense to run through him, and if they get into a scenario where nothing is open, he's going to have to use his legs. And I could see Cade having 400, 500 yards. Going back to my final thought, I think running back breakdown, let me give it to you. Randall, Davidson, 600 yards apiece. Eziomume, 500 yards, and then you have Cade Klubnik, 500 yards. So that's what, 2,200 right there, give or take. So you really only have 200 yards left of what my personal cap would be for the team. And it may even be less than that because of the amount of weapons you have at wide receiver now. And so the running back production could go backwards in 2025, but it could be one of the better rotational groups that Clemson's had in quite some time. So it's kind of a give and take there. Hopefully these guys understand their role and understand what the season looks like for 2025. And none of them expect to be Superman, Batman out there, thunder and lightning. Maybe there is a thunder and lightning that eventually works its way into the end of the season in 2025. Maybe you see more of that towards the end of the season, but I think for the majority of the season, you're going to see a running back by committee, as they say, a group of guys that are really good, but none that, are up in the 1,000 yard rushing. So that's my bold take there for you. Let me know if I'm absolutely crazy. And how can you let me know? Well, there's two ways. You can go over on YouTube and you can tell me in the comments, or you can follow me over on X at the Morgan T Show and message me over there. Clemson, I think, is going to do the right thing. They're going to do the smart thing, and they're going to do what I think will get them to another playoff run and possibly even a bid for the national championship. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith, and he has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan of the rapid changes in college football and the landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.